Jace had always considered himself an expert at blending into new environments, which was essential when you were a human stuck in the middle of the cosmos, trying not to trip over alien customs and awkward social protocols today. However, he felt more like a neon sign in a dark alley, bright, loud, and utterly out of place. The sprawling market on Zerith Prime was the kind of place that could swallow you whole if you weren't careful. Vendors shouted offers for exotic, bioengineered fruits that tasted like a sunrise wrapped in chocolate, robotic pets that barked, binary and holographic trinkets that promised to brighten your existential dread. It was chaos, it was mesmerizing, and it was exactly where Jace had decided to find an answer to the question that had been bothering him. Since he arrived, he had noticed her almost immediately, not because she was waving signs or selling intergalactic popcorn, but because she was sitting quietly on a bench shaped like a swirling nebula, her long ears twitching slightly as if tuned to some secret frequency. To any casual observer, she looked human enough. Her skin was a smooth porcelain, eyes the color of storm clouds, and hair cascading like liquid night, but those ears, they curved elegantly upward, a telltale mark of her alien heritage. Jace's curiosity was piqued. He had studied alien customs extensively, but no manual prepared him for the magnetic pull of this quiet, mysterious figure. Taking a deep breath, Jace approached her, rehearsing his greeting in several languages. Hello. Greetings, I come in peace and the always safe. Nice day for a quantum flux, isn't it? Nothing seemed quite right, but he settled on the simplest approach. Hi, can I ask you something? The alien girl's head snapped up, her eyes widened like twin moons, reflecting surprise, then sheer panic. Without a word, she leapt from the bench with the agility of a mountain cat and sprinted away, her long ears flapping wildly behind her. Before Jace could react, a voice echoed from the crowd. A human, her scream wasn't just a warning, it was a full-on alarm. People glanced his way, some wary, some amused, others barely hiding their smirks. Jace felt the heat rise in his cheeks. Nothing like a public spectacle to make you wish you could dematerialize on the spot. He stood frozen for a moment, blinking at the retreating figure in the buzzing crowd. Then a small, dry voice in his head whispered, "Well done, Jace. You're officially the galaxy's most awkward ambassador," determined not to be deterred by a few dramatic reactions. Jace shook off the embarrassment and scanned the crowd. Several bystanders seemed amused but unhelpful. One elderly alien offered a sympathetic shrug and muttered something about young ones and their distrust of humans. Jace wondered if that meant he was now officially young in the eyes of interstellar civilizations, or just hopelessly naive. The marketplace resumed its frenetic energy, vendors shouting, robots zipping between stalls, and a small drone hovering nearby that seemed more interested in Jace's pockets than the alien drama. Jace realized he had no plan beyond talk to the alien girl, which suddenly felt both ambitious and absurd. Still, the spark of intrigue wouldn't let him walk away. He decided to wait, hoping she might reappear. Maybe she needed time to process that humans weren't all intergalactic marauders or unintentional chaos bringers. Maybe, just maybe, she was curious. 2 minutes passed. The sun hung low in Ziritha's twin skies, casting long shadows across the neon-lit stalls. Then, just as Jace was about to resign himself to a solo dinner of synthetic noodles and regret, a figure approached from behind. It was her, the alien girl, with cautious steps but no scream this time. She stopped beside him, eyes darting nervously. "Why do you want to talk to me?" she asked in a voice that was soft but edged with suspicion. Jace smiled, relieved, because sometimes the best way to understand someone isn't by hiding or yelling, but by asking a simple question and maybe sharing some really bad jokes, if you're up for it. The girl hesitated, Then let out a laugh, a sound like tinkling crystal mixed with amusement. Bad jokes, huh? That's a human thing, isn't it? Absolutely, Jay said. I'm full of them. Want to hear one? She nodded. Just a little. Why did the robot go on a diet? He asked, lowering his voice like a magician about to reveal a trick. The alien blinked. Why? Because it had too many bites, she groaned, but the smile lingered. You're terrible. Thank you, Jay said with mock pride. It's a talent. That moment marked the fragile beginning of an unlikely friendship built on curiosity, cautious trust in the odd human joke that somehow transcended languages and species. The marketplace buzzed around them, but for a moment two beings from vastly different worlds found common ground beneath Zeroth's twin suns. And somewhere deep inside, Jacis felt that maybe this was exactly where he was meant to be. The sun had barely begun its slow descent behind the jagged purple spires of Zerith Prime's capital when Jacis found himself standing once again in the bustling marketplace, this time with the alien girl beside him. She introduced herself quietly as Lyra, her voice barely louder than a whispered breeze, but somehow it carried the weight of a lifetime's caution. The long ears that had fluttered in panic before now twitched with what Jace chose to believe was a growing curiosity rather than suspicion. Navigating the marketplace with Lyra was like trying to read a book where half the pages were in a language you didn't understand and the other half were written backwards. Vendors tried to sell them everything from glowing plants that hummed lullabies to quantum entangled pets that responded to emotions. Lyra moved carefully, as if every step carried the risk of setting off an unseen trap. Jace, on the other hand, felt like a kid in a candy store, except the candy might bite back and the kid had no idea what any of it actually was. I don't understand why you humans make such a fuss about this place, Lyra muttered, eyeing a robotic vendor that looked suspiciously like a slightly melted toaster with googly eyes. All this noise, colors, smells, it's chaotic. Jace grinned. That's called fun. Back on Earth, though, sometimes I think our planet invented chaos just to keep things interesting. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Interesting, that sounds exhausting. He shrugged. Maybe, but it keeps life from being boring. Like, for example, trying to get an alien to laugh at a terrible robot joke. Lyra's ears twitched again. You're still trying with the jokes? Absolutely, Jace said, pulling out a small device from his jacket, a sleek neural translator designed to ease inner species communication. Though I have to admit, some of my jokes are so bad even the translator tries to self-destruct. She giggled, a light melodic sound that made Jace's chest tighten in a way he couldn't quite explain. Maybe you should stick to questions instead. Fair enough, he agreed. Speaking of which, why do you avoid humans besides the screaming part? Of course. Lyra's expression flickered briefly. It's not personal. Humans have a reputation for what? Taking over planets, trying to befriend alien girls with bad jokes. She smiled, despite herself mostly the first one in your bad jokes. But yes, humans have been known to cause complications. Jace chuckled. Complications, huh? Sounds like a universal language. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion. Nearby, a group of small drones, each about the size of a grapefruit and buzzing with reckless energy, began darting between the crowd, chasing a mischievous bioengineered critter that looked like a cross between a squirrel and a chameleon. One drone crashed spectacularly into a vendor stall, sending a cascade of levitating fruits spinning through the air like a slow-motion fruit salad disaster. Jace couldn't help but laugh. Well, that's one way to clear a crowd. Lyra watched, amused. To spite herself, your chaos theory seems to be at work here too. As the drones were rounded up and the vendor fussed over the scattered fruits, Jace seized the moment to ask a question he'd been turning over in his mind. Lyra, what's it like to live here to be? You, her gaze grew distant. It's complicated. I'm different, not just because of my ears or my fears, because I'm not fully accepted by my people. I'm seen as a burden. Jace frowned, sensing the depth behind her words. That sounds lonely, it is, she admitted, but it's also why I stay quiet. Avoid attention. People fear what they don't understand. Jace nodded slowly. I get that humans aren't always great at accepting differences. Either. Then maybe you're not like the others, Lyra said softly. Maybe you want to understand. I do, Jay said firmly, and maybe I'm a little stubborn too. She laughed again, and this time it felt like a bridge forming between two very different worlds in that moment. Surrounded by the swirling chaos of the marketplace, Jace realized that sometimes the best way to find connection wasn't through grand gestures or perfect communication, but through patience, shared laughter, and the willingness to keep trying even when it seemed impossible. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the market in hues of orange and violet, Jason and Lyra walk side by side, two strangers bound by curiosity and the promise of something new, something neither of them had expected, but both quietly hoped for. The moment they entered, Jace noticed how different the place felt from the chaotic market below. Holographic star maps floated lazily near one wall, casting shimmering blue patterns across the room. A shelf held various small artifacts, strange crystals pulsing faintly with energy, delicate mechanical insects trapped in glass domes, and a curious collection of human trinkets LRA had apparently salvaged or traded for, including a battered earth music player that looked like it had survived several galactic crashes. Lyra glanced at Jace, a flicker of nervousness in her stormy eyes. This is my sanctuary, not much, but it's mine. Jace grinned, feeling the familiar pull of curiosity. Looks like a spaceship captain's cabin, very stylish. She smirked. I'll take that as a compliment. Just don't ask me to pilot anything, I'm terrible with directions. He chuckled. Same here. If I had to navigate by star charts, I'd probably end up in a black hole or a Klingon opera house. Lyra laughed, a soft musical sound that seemed to fill the room with warmth. You humans and your pop culture references. Sometimes I wonder if you're all just walking universes of confusion. Guilty as charged, Jace admitted, but hey, at least it makes life interesting. Settling into a pair of sleek chairs that adjusted automatically to their bodies, Jace noticed a small device on a side table humming quietly. What's this? Lyra's expression turned mischievous. A neural story weaver. It allows me to share memories in a way words can't capture. Think of it as virtual reality, but for feelings and thoughts. Jace raised an eyebrow. You mean like dreams you can replay? Exactly. Want to see? He nodded eagerly, and Lyra carefully placed the device over his temples. A cool, tingling sensation spread across his mind, and suddenly he was transported not to a place but to a moment vivid and alive. He saw flashes of Lyra's childhood, the sprawling forests of her home planet, the gleaming towers of her city, and the moments that had shaped her, the laughter of siblings, the sting of isolation, the weight of expectation. Jace gasped softly, overwhelmed by the depth of experience laid bare before him. When the vision faded, he looked at Lyra with newfound respect. That was incredible. It's like reading a book written in your soul. She smiled shyly. It's how I share the parts of me I can't say out loud. They spent the next few hours exchanging stories, Jay sharing tales of Earth's quirks and chaos, Lyra revealing fragments of her life hidden beneath layers of silence. Between moments of revelation, they peppered the conversation with jokes and playful banter. At one point, Jaceese attempted to mimic a famous Earth comedian, which resulted in a perfectly timed but entirely accidental knock to a hovering Hollow projector. The machine sputtered and displayed a glitchy pixelated version of a dancing alien octopus, eliciting a burst of laughter from both of them. See, even my clumsiness has an artistic side, Jace quipped, bowing dramatically. Lyra rolled her eyes but laughed nonetheless. You're impossible. As the night deepened and the city's neon glow softened the boundaries between alien and human, stranger and friend, seemed to blur. They talked about fears and dreams, about the possibility of bridging worlds that had long been divided by misunderstanding and fear. Yet beneath it all a quiet hope took root, a hope fueled not by grand declarations or cosmic events but by simple moments shared in a small, softly lit room. Before leaving, Lyra handed Jace a small, intricately carved pendant shaped like a star. For luck, she said, her long ears twitching nervously. Jace smiled, touched by the gesture. I'll wear it proudly, and I promise to keep the terrible jokes coming. She laughed again, the sound lingering like a melody as he stepped back into the vibrant streets of Zereth Prime. The stars above seemed to twinkle with approval, as if the universe itself was nodding to the beginning of a story that neither of them could have predicted, but both were eager to see unfold. The dawn on Zyra Prime broke with a kaleidoscope of colors spilling across the sky, pinks melting into deep blues, purples bleeding into golds, as if the universe itself were celebrating a new chapter. Jay stood on the balcony of Lyra's apartment, the pendant she had given him swinging gently in his hand. It was heavier than it looked like. It carried the weight of unspoken promises and fragile hopes. He inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of alien flora carried by the morning breeze, mingling with the faint hum of distant hovercrafts and the quiet murmur of a city waking up. For weeks now Jace's world had been entwined with Lyra's, a weaving of two very different lives, linked by a simple but powerful thread. Trust. What had started as a moment of fear and misunderstanding, the alien girl running away screaming, a human, had evolved into something far more complex, far more human. Despite the vast cosmic gulf between them, he smiled to himself, thinking back to the many awkward moments, the jokes that had fallen flat like a zero-gravity stool, and the times Lyra's sharp wit had rescued him from social oblivion. She had long ears, yes, but now those ears were attuned to the rhythm of a friendship, and maybe something more that neither had dared imagine. Jace turned as Lyra joined him on the balcony, her long ears catching the light as she smiled softly. You look like you're plotting to rewrite the entire history of human-alien diplomacy. He laughed. Maybe I am, or maybe I'm just trying to figure out how to explain to my superiors that befriending an alien girl beats attending another boring summit. Lara raised an eyebrow. So what's the plan? Simple. We show them that differences aren't threats, that understanding can be found in jokes, in stories, in moments like this. He gestured between them. And maybe, just maybe, that humans aren't as scary as your people think. She sighed, a mixture of relief and uncertainty. It won't be easy. Fear runs deep, but maybe it's time for a new narrative. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert on Jace's risk communicator, an urgent message from the Earth diplomatic mission. The political tensions between their worlds had been simmering, and an unexpected summit was scheduled to discuss the future of interplanetary relations. Jace felt a familiar knot tighten in his stomach, but this time he wasn't facing it alone. The day of the summit arrived, set in a grand chamber suspended in orbit around Zereth Prime, a breathtaking sight of stars and swirling nebula visible through transparent walls. Delegates from both planets filled the room, their expressions a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and cautious hope. When Jay stepped forward to introduce Lyra, whispers rippled through the crowd. Here was the girl who had once fled in Terror at the sight of a human now, standing proudly as a symbol of change. Her presence challenged every preconceived notion held by both sides. Lyra spoke with a calm strength that belied her earlier fears. She shared her story not just of isolation and suspicion but of friendship, laughter, and the courage it took to embrace the unknown. Her long ears twitched slightly as she delivered a joke about humans' obsession with coffee, earning a ripple of laughter even from the stiffest delegates. Jace caught her eye and smiled. The moment was more than political, it was personal. As the summit progressed, barriers began to crumble. Proposals for joint exploration missions, cultural exchanges, and scientific collaborations were met with enthusiasm. The ice of distrust thawed under the warmth of shared stories and shared laughter. Later, as the chamber emptied and the stars outside shone brighter than ever, Jace and Lyra found themselves alone once more. So, Jace began, "Think we just made history?" Lyra tilted her head, a playful glint in her eyes. "History, or at least a really good story for future generations, preferably one with fewer diplomatic disasters and more jokes." He laughed, agreed, "and maybe a sequel." She smiled, her long ears catching the light like delicate wings. "A sequel where humans and aliens actually get along." Jace nodded, feeling the weight of the pendant in his hand, a reminder of how far they'd come as they looked out at the vastness of space. Two beings from different worlds but shared hopes. Jace realized that sometimes the greatest journeys weren't across galaxies but across the invisible distances between hearts, and in that journey they had both changed, becoming not just ambassadors of their species but ambassadors of understanding, laughter, and hope. The stars twinkled in silent applause, a universe that had witnessed an unlikely friendship blossom into a beacon for the future.